Hey everybody, Ryan here at eTrailer. Today on our 2022 Subaru Forester, we're going to be showing you how to install the CURT Class 2 trailer hitch receiver. But before we do that, why don't we check this out and make sure that this is the right hitch for you. When it comes to the Forester, there's quite a few different hitch options available for it. And so what one is going to be best for you is really just going to depend on what you're looking to do. And with this one being a Class 2, it's going to have the smaller 1¼ by 1¼ opening. So this will be a good choice for those of you that really only plan on using hitch mounted accessories like a bike rack, for example, especially if you already have that 1¼ accessory. Now that's not to say that this one, you can't do some lighter duty towing and stuff with it, because you can, but if you're someone who's not really sure what they're going to use their hitch for just yet, or maybe you're going to use a bike rack and you need to still pick one out, or you're going to plan on doing some towing, or a little bit of both, a Class 3 2" by 2" one might be a better option for you. And that's just because they're a little more versatile on different types of accessories that you can use with them, and a little more heavy duty, so you can usually tow a little bit more. But it's nice to have this one as an option for those of you that are planning on really only doing what we just talked about. At the end of our receiver tube, there's going to be a reinforced collar for a little bit of extra strength. I like the way it looks too. I prefer the style of this one over the draw tight, but that's just my opinion. It is going to have, or use rather, a 1/2" size pin and clip. Keep in mind though, this doesn't come with the hitch. If you need one, not a big deal, you can always grab it here at eTrailer. And these safety chain openings, they're going to sit back a little bit of ways, shouldn't interfere at all with our pin and clip. And the openings are going to be large enough to allow us to use just about any size hook that our trailer might have. As far as the hitch's weight capacities go, it's going to have a 350-pound maximum gross tongue weight rating. And that's going to be the amount of weight that is pushing down on the hitch. So that's good for those 1 to 3, potentially even 4 bike racks, kind of just depending on how heavy the bikes are. Just to kind of give you an example there. As far as the hitch's maximum gross trailer weight rating goes, that's going to be 3,500 pounds. And that's going to be the amount of weight that is pulling on the hitch. So the weight of your trailer plus anything that you might have on it. Now, I do always like to suggest it's never a bad idea just to grab your Subaru's owner's manual. That way you can make sure your Forester can pull that much weight safely. Now let's go ahead, just grab a couple of measurements, and these will allow us to help figure out what type of accessories are going to work the best. If you go from the ground to the top inside edge of the receiver tube opening, that's going to be about 15 inches. So chances are pretty good if you are going to be pulling a trailer around, you can use a ball mount that has a straight shank. And if you go from the center of the hitch pin hole to the edge of the rear bumper, that's going to be about 5 inches, and that's some decent clearance. But you can use that measurement to figure out exactly if any of those folding type accessories you might have can indeed be stored in that upright position without contacting the back of your Subaru's bumper. Other than that though, at the end of the day, if you're looking for an 1¼ hitch, this is probably the best option, at least in my opinion. As far as getting this installed, really not too bad. No crazy modifications needed or anything like that. There is going to be a couple of holes in the frame rail that you have to kind of file to make just a little bit bigger to get the bolts up there, but nothing really too complicated. So as long as you take your time, stay focused, you really shouldn't run into too many issues. But speaking of the install, why don't we go ahead and put the hitch on together now. To begin our installation, we're going to be underneath the back of our Subaru, and first things first, we need to just let the exhaust come down a little bit. That way we'll have some extra room to work. To make that easier, I do suggest taking a strap and just running it from side to side. That way we can kind of control how fast and how far we let the exhaust come down. So we're going to have 3 rubber isolator hangers, one here, one just like it on the other side of the muffler, and then one towards the center of the car. We're going to pry these off. You can use a big screwdriver or pry bar if you got one, but Also helps to lubricate them. You can spray soapy water, penetrating oil, something like that on them, and simply just pry it off. And now we can do that to the 2 remaining isolator hangers. The other one will be, this one's a little trickier to get to. It's kind of buried up there in the corner, but same idea. Just pry one end of it off. Maybe just follow the exhaust pipe towards the front. I have one more right here. We'll work that off. Then we're able to loosen up our strap and let the exhaust come down a little bit. At this point, we can remove the heat shield here. So this is going to be held in place with 4 10mm fasteners. So just one in each corner. Take our socket, get all these removed. Let this last one out. Just temporarily lower this and set it to the side. What we can do now, over on the driver's side here, we can remove this underbody panel. So there's 2 10mm screws. Pull those out. And then we're gonna have some push pin type fasteners. Looks like we'll have 3 along this edge, and then we might have some more back here too. We'll get these out first and see. So with these, you just take a flathead screwdriver, or even a trim tool if you got one, pry underneath the head of it and work the fastener out. And yeah, it feels like it's still attached, so back on this side we might have another fastener or 2 we need to pull out. So it looks like we're gonna have 2 more fasteners. Same deal with these. Although they look a little different, they work the same. Just pry underneath the head, pull it out. And now with it like that, we should be able to kind of grab this and work it out from underneath the vehicle. Underneath, on the bottom side of our frame rail, we're gonna have 4 rubber plugs that we need to pull out. So you can just take a screwdriver and pop them on out. And I wanna mention, from this point on, anything we do to one side of our vehicle, we're also gonna do to the other side, because it'll be set up the same way. And what we need to do is enlarge a hole to get our hardware in place. So I like to use this one because it's already bigger and more out of the way. The only issue is it's just a little bit too small to get our hardware in, our bolt and our spacer block. So what I'm gonna do is just take a die grinder bit and enlarge this a little bit. If you don't have a power tool that can do this, a hand file will work as well. You don't have to remove that much material, so you know, it is reasonable, but obviously doing it by hand will take you a little bit longer. With that said, I'm going to enlarge this a little bit until we have it just big enough to be able to get our hardware in place. So being able to get the spacer block in there, as well as the carriage bolt head, looks like we're in pretty good shape. So now we can actually get all the hardware actually in there. And so what we're gonna do, we're gonna have 3 attachment points, which will be these 3 holes. You're gonna take your fish wire and take the coiled end and kind of line it up with this, and then put a bend in it where it's gonna be close. Makes it easier to come out. And what you're gonna do is take the coiled end, put it through that hole there, feed it towards the front of our car, and get that coiled end out. Sometimes it pops right out, other times you might have to reach up there I'll give it a little help. Spacer block goes over it. Carriage bolt threads onto it. And then feed the hardware up. Until it drops out. And essentially I'm going to use that same exact process and same exact hardware for our other remaining 2 attachment points. Once you have all the hardware in place, it's not a bad idea to take some spray paint and just kind of shoot some over the hole that we enlarged. That way we'll have a layer of protection on that bare metal and we don't have to worry about rust or corrosion issues in the future. What we can do now is move to our heat shield and trim this out. So there's 2 dimples on this R and M, and we can use those as a guide. And I'm just going to use a hole saw to cut that material out. That way our bolt can pass through there. If you don't have a hole saw, I mean, I suppose you could always just take a pair of tin snips and cut this little area out as well. Really not a huge deal on what way you do it, as long as this can bolt back up and your hardware can go through there. With the holes drilled, you can reinstall this. So once you feed the fish wires through the holes there that we created, line this up, and we're going to install all the hardware, the factory hardware, with the exception of that one there. And that's because if you put that in, it'll interfere with our hitch. So I like to get all these started and zip them down. Now with an extra set of hands, we can take our hitch and get it into position. So you want to drop the pull wires down through the right holes in the hitch. And once you have them through, you can lift this up, get all the bolts to come out, and then you want to remove the pull wire. We're going to take a flange nut, and we want to get at least one of them started on each side, hand tight. That way the hitch will support itself while we work on the rest of the hardware. We'll continue to get the rest of our hardware on and hand tight, and once we have it like that, you can take a 19mm or a 3/4 inch socket and snug everything down. With all the hardware snug, we need to make sure to come back with a torque wrench and tighten it all down to the amount specified in the instructions. If you don't have a torque wrench, you can always get one here at eTrailer, or a lot of times you go to your local auto parts store and they'll have one there available that you can rent. What we can do now is get our exhaust raised back into position. So when you're doing this, helps to spray everything down again, and then these essentially will just kind of slide right back into place. Get them all popped on there. And then once we get this final one on, we can remove our strap since the exhaust is supporting itself again. So I went ahead and replaced our underbody panel, same way that we removed it, really with one exception. So at first we had 2 bolts holding it in here, but obviously the hitch is blocking that other bolt. So simply just left that one out. Not really a big deal. It's not going to go anywhere. but just figured I'd mention that. And that'll finish up our look at and our installation of the CURT Class 2 trailer hitch receiver on our 2022 Subaru Forester.